All right. Let me see if we are live, it looks like. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Just type in the comments yes or hear you fine. I want to make sure I didn't botch this at all. Let's see. Welcome to this webinar. I'm going to lead you guys through a couple things. So I'll do some quick housekeeping real quick before we get started today. I need to hear from you guys in the comments about questions as I'm going through this. Essentially what you're going to be watching is a presentation I gave earlier this week about run form and the 3 secrets to improving your run form. It's a kind of like a beginner, not a beginner, but the first layer of improving your run form. I'm just here just making sure I can see if you guys can hear me okay. Sounds good. Excellent. Yes. Okay, so this is part of the Midfoot project, which is a program that we're going to be starting on April 1st, so that's 2 days away. Tomorrow's the last day to sign up. The presentation that I'm showing you now is something I did earlier in the week. So as you're going through this, I'm going to be back live at the end, answering your questions. Drop them in the comments for me so that I can answer those for you. So without further ado, the presentation lasts about 40 minutes. There's a lot of good nuggets in here, so grab a piece of paper if you want it, grab your coffee, sit and relax, and then I will see you guys towards the end. I'll be in the comments answering any of your questions as we go through, but let's get this baby rolling. What do you think? All right. So let's see if I can not break this. I'm notorious for it, and then I'm going to kill my mic. So we'll see you guys in a little bit. And let me know if you have questions. So what I'm going to talk about today is run form. So how do you improve your run form to get more speed, better times, and less soreness? And really, this is kind of piggybacking off of a program that we're launching. I'll talk about that as we get going. But I want you guys to understand, especially as triathletes, that everyone's really focused on trying to chop times down with usually off-the-shelf products, when really the biggest thing you can do is work on some form. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And then what's like the first step? I always say pun intended after that, of how do you start fixing your form so that you can do these things. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm really excited because I get to use this pen as a clicker, and I haven't been able to yet. So my goal for this class is to teach you that your run form matters, and small changes can have huge effects in your running for not only the short term, but also years to come. And we're going to go through some of those changes and what we've been doing this for 10 years, and I'll talk about that, but also what are the main errors that people make, because usually everyone makes the same mistake when they try to make this transition. So that it's going to help, better run form can help you run faster, better run form can help you save your knees. We're going to talk about that, because it is the most injured joint running, and unless you lay down your bike on the pavement, it's very difficult to get hurt cycling. And then certainly with swimming, there's some shoulder stuff, but most of the triathletes we see are for running-related injuries. So a lot of those things you can protect against. And then, I'm probably in the way for some of you guys, better run form can help make running more enjoyable, less beat up, less stiff afterwards, if you kind of implement, especially this first step. Some people might already be running this way, but it does make a huge difference for you when you do that. And we're going to talk about some other sports that really capitalize on this. Some of you don't know me. That's good for you. So I'm a father of 2. This is my son. After I ran Boston 1 year, I have a 9-month-old daughter. My son is now 4. I'm a doctor of physical therapy from Damon College. I grew up locally in Eden, New York. I did not drive my tractor to school, and I did work on a farm though, and that made me realize I wanted to be in an air-conditioned building the rest of my life. I've qualified for the Boston Marathon 6 times. I've done Ironman Lake Placid in Louisville. It's been a long time for that. I do plan on going back to that eventually when the kids get a little bit bigger. And I've been nerding out on running for about 10 years, and I'll give you that story here in a second of what set me on this path. My running career really started as a necessity because my whole life I pretty much chased the ball. Was involved in football, baseball, soccer, anything that involved chasing the ball. And then I went into rugby in college for whatever reason, and realized that sport's not sustainable. I had a couple of head injuries pretty quick, and then I got out of that. And then I found running as a passion, and I'll talk to you about that as we go through. So as far as nerding out about running, that started about 10 years ago, which started Run Smart Online, which started here in Buffalo. We have runners from all over the world right now, from the UK to Australia. You know that because they complain about the time change, and some of our programs are run off the time zone you're in, and they get really aggravated. So we're working on some fixes, but it really started 10 years ago. I had 2 runners in the clinic. I was running myself, not too successfully at this point. And both runners that I had were pretty frustrated. So I'm just going to illustrate this. We had runner 1 and runner 2. I put this together last night really late, so there's definitely some letters. Kate, don't ding me on any grammar or spelling.
Yeah, I'm going to have like a list of like corrections. Oh, yeah. I hear about it whenever I misspell something. So runner 1 was frequently injured, and runner 2 they bombed at a race. And the neat thing about this is that their training plans weren't a disaster. They were training really well as far as that I could see at the time. Their strength was improving. They were still weak, but it wasn't completely a mess. So they were doing a lot of the right things. And I think of training, especially the running spectrum, as having three main pillars. You have your training plan, and if anyone's a dietitian here, they're going to yell at me, but I think of it as training plan, your strength, and your run form. And you can certainly argue for powering yourself on beer and stuff, but I leave that out. And I talk about those 3 main pillars. And they had really the first 2. They were strong, they had good training plans. And what I ended up finding out, and this is the first time I looked at a runner in slow motion, is that they were working against their natural movement of their body when I actually got them on the treadmill, watched them run, and slowed it down to a frame-by-frame basis. And I paired that with a lot of the research that I was reading online, because this is 10 years ago, was Born to Run was really popular. People were all on Vibram 5 fingers. Barefoot running was huge. And whenever I say it's died out, there's like trolls on the internet that just hammer me about that. But for the most part, that has died out. And I'm going to show you guys why the shoe really doesn't matter. It's more about, again, your form. So how does this apply to you guys? Runners spend a lot of time training for a single event, especially if you're doing a long-distance triathlon or in general. But 80% of runners are injured every single year. So it's super high. And the runners that are injured are being marked as runners who had a significant change in their training due to an injury. So they did a research study that screened marathon runners as they came through, asking about their cycle. And 80% are injured every single year. Crossing your fingers, this applies to you because this is not a good strategy. And hoping, this is where most people are. What are you doing to not get injured? Just hoping it doesn't happen. Not a great strategy for you. You definitely want to have a strategy, and this is part of that strategy. Like any other sport or activity in life, your form matters. I like to use golf because I think it's really relevant. You can go out and buy better clubs. Doesn't mean you're going to play any better. I know that for a fact. You can, I think, and for you guys, swimming is the biggest thing. Like, how much time do you guys spend on your stroke? How much time do you spend on your run form? It's usually super upside down on that because the water is so much more resistant to your movement, and you essentially are exhausted if you don't figure out how to improve your swimming form. So as triathletes are all about form, and then the run form is like, I just put one foot in front of the other, see what happens. And it does make a huge difference. Golf is a good example, swimming is a good example. Small changes to run forms can have amazing impact on your running. The nice thing about working on your run form is you do it while running. We do a program that's about 30 minutes a week for 5 weeks to make this change that I'm going to talk about. You can do it while you're doing it just like you can with swimming. You just got to know what you're working on and how to do it so you don't get hurt, because unlike swimming, you have a lot of load, so little small changes, even if a change of a shoe can get you hurt in running. So if you don't do it properly, it's real easy to get injured. The small changes, I said, can already be implemented when you're already running or doing it. So this stuff works. So this is some runners that went through our program. I want you to just kind of understand that this does work if you do it. This is a runner, Michelle, who went through one of our programs. She's a year older and 2 minutes faster, the half marathon at Flying Pig. She is not a local runner. We had some local runners that went through this as well. 10K runner, she went through some stuff. So we don't talk about this too much, but she's going through some of the stuff that we use, like friends and helpers, pick them up, put them down. Just some of the strategies we use that when you get tired in a race, your run form usually looks a little bit worse when you're tired than at the start, right? So there's some strategies you can use. We don't talk about that too much today, but she used some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight, and she got good results with it as well. That's Rebecca. So what I'm going to cover tonight is 3 secrets that can help you guys make this change. Number 1 is how do you stop breaking on every step. Number 2 is how improving your run form can tap into what you call your natural rubber bands. And the third one is how to improve your run form without toe running. Because when people make this transition, they tend to find themselves on their toes and then in here for an Achilles injury or calf injury. So we don't want that as well. So numero uno. Secret number 1, how to stop breaking on every step. So I think I have some runners. No, not yet. Okay. Dan. So secret number one, some people think I don't need to improve my run form. Improving my run form won't matter that much because I'm not fast. I'm going to show you why this matters. Interesting story about this. This is the face I make every day in the clinic. We actually, Dan can vouch for this, we printed this out and we held it up to our faces when a patient or a runner would say something ridiculous. And some of you might have heard this story, but I had a patient once that was, usually when I talk to people about their injuries, they do everything they can to make me think that they're not hurt so that I can tell them that they can continue running. So I was talking to her about her pain, and she says, I'm just trying to get it out of her so she can, I don't know, I feel like I'm a therapist sometimes, but she said, Steve, it just doesn't hurt. My knee doesn't hurt, it just feels awful. I'm like, I think we're splitting hairs a little bit, I'm not sure. So this is a face I make all the time in the clinic. We're actually going to see this come up again. So running faster with less braking and better shock absorption. We're going to talk about ground reaction forces in driving your car because there's an easy analogy to understand that. If you think about the average runner, they take 80 steps a minute on average on one leg. So if you take both legs, it's 160 steps a minute. And the most typical run form, which we're going to talk about, which is toes pulled up, knees straight, entering the ground. When you do that, to me, it's the equivalent of driving your car down the road and just tapping the brakes. You have a start-stop cycle. With run form, you don't feel it when you're running because you're carrying momentum and your body's learned to become efficient at being inefficient. It's why when you start running, it's pretty difficult, and then as you continue to run, it just gets easier. You can have the worst form in the world. You can run, like this. Eventually, it'll feel normal to you because you do it enough. Your brain says, oh, you want to do that? I'm just going to refine that system, make it natural, and you're going to feel great. And it's not, your brain doesn't care about how well you do something. The only thing it cares about is task completion. It'll figure out a way to get it done, it'll grab from whatever's available, and it'll make it happen. So we typically see that people essentially run like they're tapping the brakes on every step. It starts this start running motion. I'm going to show you a runner here in a second who is doing this. And then closed pack positions and banging your joints. One of the best things you can do to preserve your knees, does anyone know what this isn't for a gift or the thing. What's the most common joint injured in a runner? Yeah, exactly. You're probably sick of hearing that at like your family party, like, how are your knees? But the knees are the most injured joint. There's a really clever named injury called runner's knee. So the knee is the most impacted joint, but when you improve your run form, it's been proven in the research, you can significantly decrease the load in your knees, which can lead to some other issues if you don't do it right, which we'll talk about. But the interesting thing, if you look, and we learn this in physical therapy school, there's something called the closed pack position. What that means is that when you're in this position, you have the most bony contact. At the knee, when your knee is locked, there's the most bony contact. And when your ankle is at neutral or pulled up and dorsiflexed, it has the most bony contact. So, runner coming through, we're going to see here in a second, straight knee, toes pulled up, into that. You're essentially just landing on all your bones, which are not forgiving. We're going to talk about a couple examples that really illustrate this, but the closed pack position is bad, but this is how most people run, and they just bang into their bones rather than into their muscles and tendons. So it has high impact to the knees and bones. And I'm going to talk about why your shoes are not your problem, because there's really interesting research that came out because you have, anyone here a minimalist before I get in trouble? All right. We're talking about some research that came out that people switch to these minimalist shoes, but they don't change their form and the same stuff happens and they run the same way, regardless of the shoes that are on their feet. So, secret number one, talking about this, here's the research. This says Lieberman did a barefoot running style. Barefoot running style minimizes peak impacts and provides increased proprioception and foot strength. So let's just take that first part, minimizes peak impacts. This is a heel-toe runner. And you'll see, as this is the point when their heel hits the ground, they have this quick spike. So that's this. Then their foot has to slap to the ground. That's that. And then they come towards push-off, which comes down, and now their foot's off the ground again. What they found is when someone heel strikes, you get this maximum force. Even though you get two impacts for every strike, this first bump is the big issue with when people run with that closed pack, toes up, knees straight position. What ends up happening is you have a lot of force, about 3 times your body weight coming in contact with the ground, and it happens in 5 milliseconds, 80 times a minute on one leg, 160 on both. What they found is that when you can teach somebody, they did barefoot, which I'm not thrilled about, but the principle is still the same. When someone comes in, lands on a soft foot with their knee bent, this line smooths out. You still get the same amount of force because unless you're losing weight and gravity is the same, it's not going to change. But what happens is that line smooths out and you can take that same force and spread it out. So instead of 5 milliseconds, you can take it and give your body time to react. And they found that also runners who did that increase their proprioception, which essentially is just your joint awareness. So if I know my thumb's up without looking at it because the thumb's sending me signals. That's proprioception. So runners who did not run this way had improved proprioception and foot strength because when you land not on toes up, knee straight, you have to catch yourself on something other than the bone, and that's the muscles. So you're going to naturally just strengthen yourself as you do that. Kumala found that runners with natural forefoot strike pattern demonstrated lower patellofemoral stresses compared to heel strikers. They say forefoot. We're going to just strike that from the record, and we're going to talk about more midfoot running because forefoot has its problems as well. But it just shows you when you don't land with that straight knee, you're okay. So what they're saying here, so we take this kneecap off and show it to you. When someone heel strikes, the amount of force, you can think of your patella in your thigh bone is a finger between two knuckles. As you run and do stuff, that patella moves up and down. Someone who heel strikes has significantly more pressure between those two. Runner's knee is the most injured. The knee is the most injured site in runners, and runner's knee is pretty popular for runners, believe it or not. Unlike golfer's elbow, like no golfer ever gets golfer's elbow, but all runners get runner's knee. But what they're saying here is that people who don't heel strike get less force in that most commonly injured spot. So when you look at the mechanics of it, which we will look at, you'll completely understand why, because there's a right and a wrong way to do this, and you should learn the right way. I got to remember I'm supposed to be asking you guys questions on this, so all these stats are in play, just so you know. All right, so I'm going to come over here. See if I can get this to play. Is it going to do it with a click? Oh, there it is. All right, so here's the typical run form for everyone, right? Let me see if I can pause there. Wow, one more try. I want the other foot. Nice. Okay, so this is typically, I didn't tell her to run this way. This is, if you've ever seen a race photo that looks like this, you are one of these people. And most people, when they want to run, especially people who haven't run their whole life, right? They didn't start off as a kid, they picked it up later as an adult. All they know is walking. This is really how you should walk. Straight kneed, because it's more efficient. It's not a lot of impact, so you can walk that way. But when people want to run later in life, they say, okay, I'm just going to grab what I know. Okay, I know how to walk. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to speed it up. So if you, anyone here ever have a race photo and you're like, yeah, it looks like I'm kind of walking there. Yeah. Or seeing this posture, it's very difficult to run down the road this way. Closed pack position, remember we talked about that, maximum bone impact at the ankle because her toes are pulled up. Her knee is straight, so she's banging on the bones this way. And it's really difficult to move down the road that way. So let's see if I can advance. Come on, yes. All right, so we talked about tapping the brakes, right? So driving the car down the road 160 times a minute, you're going to tap the brakes. So this is the tap of the brakes. This red line represents the ground reaction force, which is essentially how is the ground pushing against your body when you're landing. And you can see how that force is driving up and driving backwards. This leg, when it's locked, is essentially a battering ram into the ground, which gives you all that peak force at the knee. And interestingly, all your body weight sits behind that. So I'm going to borrow you. We'll get you out of the frame. Do you mind? Okay, here, stand here. I'm going to face you that way. I want you to do what she's doing. So put that right leg out like this. Okay? And then bring this other leg backwards. Okay, so this is her posture with running, right? So I'm just going to lift up your back leg. This is a trust exercise too. Can you lift up? Just lean into me. And then lift your back leg if you can.
Oh, like up that way.
Yeah, go ahead. We're not doing well. Go see, I'll show you. So, if you're like this, right?
That's myself. I've worked like 40 hours this week.
That is a good reason not to trust me. When you're landing like this, and this white line represents where your center of mass falls, where's all your body weight falling? It's behind that point. The second she lifts up this back leg, which happens in the next frame, this happens, and the only way for her to get over that foot is she has to catch and pull herself over. So when you're trying to run, and this leg leads out, it's literally you push off, you brake. You catch yourself, you pull through, you push off, you brake. And it's over and over and over braking again, 160 times a minute if you count both legs. If you're trying to run down the road, you can either buy a $250 aero helmet to cut off 30 seconds in an Ironman bike, or you can learn how to fix this and you can chop off huge amounts of time, which I think is the most important, which is the run, especially the longer the race goes. So, just throwing it out there. Yeah, this doesn't look cool either. It does look cool, though, when you run with good form. So when someone says you look good, you're like, yeah, I know, instead of like, oh. So that's the tapping the brakes. This is what usually I go through. People are thinking, if I just change my shoes, I won't run like that anymore. The Minimalist Nation came through and did this Vibram 5 fingers, which you don't see too much anymore. But here's a cool piece of research. Only 57% of runners with the Minimalist shoes can correctly identify their foot strike. So they had a bunch of people in the room. 90% of them wearing traditional shoes could say, they could tell us how they naturally hit their foot in the ground. So they said, I heel strike. 90% of them were right. Minimalists, they have this idea that I wear these shoes, I don't fix it. And only 57% of them could correctly identify that they actually, if they heel striked or forefoot striked or midfoot striked, whatever. So the shoe is really not what we see with most people. And the truth is, running form is a movement problem and not a shoe problem. And if you train the movement, it doesn't matter what shoe, because really the shoe makes the most difference for your foot and your strength. So if you've got really sloppy feet and you say, I want to fix my run form by putting myself in this shoe that is super unsupportive, that's not going to work for you. You want the shoe to match your anatomy, your body. You want your run form to be whatever it needs to be with whatever shoe it needs. So there's a good example of this. Here's the proof. Her foot's not even on the ground. And she's already reached out with that foot. She's going to hit. Changing that shoe, we could swap another shoe on with Photoshop. Her foot's still off the ground. Her foot she's still going in the ground with a straight knee with her toes pulled up. The reason why is because the error as this leg swings through is not that her foot needs to come down. It's that she's taught herself, this runner and all runners have taught themselves to fully extend that leg and wait. And then they wait, and they crash into it. What you have to do is you have to retrain the movement so that when this foot comes through, it swings through. You learn how to stop that forward movement. You let it pause, and you just hang out there until gravity does its work and brings you back into the ground. Problem is learning that is difficult. Not difficult, is somewhat labor intensive. If you ever think like you're trying to refine your swim stroke, like you do like 3 strokes and you forget what you're doing and think about dinner, right? So like it's tough to work on form. And usually people like to run and they like to just like zone out, not think about stuff. But you can teach yourself to do this while running if you do it safely. It's just knowing how to do that. But here's a proof that it's not your shoe problem. So secret number 2, how improving your run form can tap into your natural rubber bands. So we talk about this with free speed. So your body has natural rubber bands that provide free speed. It's really free energy, but we'll call it free speed for now. We can learn a lot from jumping and then carry momentum from stride to stride. So if you all look over here quick. Oh, no, I'm going to do it over here. Gotcha. So your rubber bands are coated in this, or your rubber bands, your tendons and muscles are coated in this like sheath around them that when they get stretched, they naturally do that. They recoil. And I'll show you how we know this, but if you can engage in that, that's not going anywhere. If you load them properly and let them go, there's no caloric cost, there's no using energy, it's just the natural elasticity of your muscles. Some things are more elastic than others, but if you can learn to load that, it's the second you hit the ground, you'll stretch those things and they'll pop you into your next stride and they'll just give you a little bit of extra boost. And again, there's no burnt calorie from that. They just do that. So we want to engage those. When you run this way, you take all of that force, throw it into the next stride, and you just immediately stopped everything. You will restart it. You will stretch those rubber bands, but you have to get to here, to here, to here. Then it releases all of that, and what do? You stop again. So we want to tap into that for sure. So I pretty much talked about all this, but your muscles and tendons store free energy. They use this coating on the outside that when they're stretched, they come off. Heel striking is killing the free energy. We can see this with counter movement and jumping is a perfect example. So I think this is, nope, not there yet. So here's the runner. We talked about this. She's pushing off on her left leg. So that foot, this is my best PowerPoint skills in action here. She pushes off, and then essentially all of this force that she's generated all this force through this leg to move herself down the road. She pushes it off through here. She reaches out, she taps the brake, and she completely stops again. 80 times a minute, 160 times if you count both legs. Start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And then we talked about the load to the knee, the ankle, all that stuff. So how do we not do that? Here's the other thing I want to talk about, which is jumping. So interestingly, if anyone jumps, right, they always go down and they come up. That down is so you can load everything. They did a research study that looked at people's jump heights, the same person. So someone who goes down quick and comes up can jump higher than someone who goes down, pause, and jumps. The interesting thing about the rubber bands is that once they stretch, you don't have a lot of time until they lose that power to pop. So what you're seeing in that is someone who comes down, they load this free energy. I'm not saying they jumped like 2 feet higher. They were just significantly higher by coming down quick and coming up. They're loading down, they're stretching all those rubber bands, and then they can jump higher coming up versus down, pause, jump. That little bit of a pause completely dampens the effect of the rubber bands. They need to be stretched and let go, stretched and let go. And you can harness this in your running if we can get you away from that big old heel strike. So that's the loading phase. Obviously, he's jumping. I also want to talk about this too. So I think of running as repetitive jumping, because essentially that's what it is. You're jumping from one foot to the other. And no one comes down and lands from a jump like that. We see people who fall off ladders and they fracture their heels when that happens. There's no shock absorption through your heel with a straight knee. Anyone who jumps and lands, they absorb the blow. So when you run, you're taking 80 steps. This could be a question. Everyone should get it. 80 steps a minute, 160 times if you count both legs. You're jumping over and over and over again. You want to engage that natural bend so you can absorb the shock versus that. So let's go back to what I usually hear, and this is what some runners tell me. Okay, if this heel and straight knee thing is so bad, I'll just stop running that way. And this goes to the third secret. So this is where usually people come in and they say, I learned that heel striking is bad, like you guys are right now, and you go out and try to fix it, and then this is what happens. So improving your run form is not about avoiding the heel strike. I'm going to talk to you in depth about that real quick. But forefoot strikers exhibit lower running-induced knee loading, which we talked about, than rear foot strikers, so they have less load to their knee. But they have more load to their Achilles tendon and their calf. So the load has to go somewhere unless you're losing weight or you're cheating gravity somehow. So where is it going to go? It's going to go into your calf and your Achilles. If you are a true forefoot striker, you're going to end up like the runner I'm going to show you here in a second, who has a lot of issues going on. I won't tell him that. I did tell him that, actually. But better run form doesn't mean running on your toes. This is the third secret. All right, so back to some runners say, great, it's pretty obvious I shouldn't heel strike. I'll just stop landing on my heels. And then we get, nope, not yet. Toe running treats your body like a diving board. So this is, I like to use analogies, and it causes you to waste a lot of energy. So imagine for a second, you learn you shouldn't heel strike, you shouldn't land with a straight knee. You go, okay, I'm not going to let my heel touch the ground anymore. And this happens quite a bit. You come through, and you're so worried about hitting your heel first that they land on the toe. And the way I think about this is if you think about someone walking to the edge of a diving board and jumping on the end of it, it'll load down really hard, and then it springboards them way up in the air. Your most elastic tissue in your body is your Achilles tendon. So it will store a lot of that free energy, and it will definitely give you a pop. Problem is when you load and you hit that toe first, the heel has to sink down. Some people don't even hit the ground, which is a huge problem, but the heel will sink down. That's the diving board of you lowering down. And by the time you're ready to unload it, you're back here, and it releases all that energy, and you're throwing yourself in the air. And usually what happens is you throw yourself so high in the air that you have to come down farther, and you load it even harder, and it's this vicious cycle of running like you're on a diving board, and it will shred your calves and your Achilles. I'm already ahead of myself. And it will definitely get you hurt, which we're going to see here in a second. Toe running is not normal unless you're sprinting or running uphill. So if you're chasing someone down, maybe you get there. Or if you're running uphill, because if the ground's slanted like this, your foot comes in contact, the ground's just not there for you, so you do have to toe run on hills. But if you're not doing those two things, if you're a distance runner, not sprinting it in or chasing something or someone, you shouldn't be landing on your toes. So let's watch this gentleman. This isn't the same gentleman I'm going to show you in a second, but I have a billion of these videos, and this is the first one I found. All right. So if we just watch his left foot, you can see how hard he is on his toe as he comes down. I'm going to zoom in here a second. But what I want to show... Oh, missed it. Missed it again. Nope. Oh, come on. Hold on. All right, there we go. He is so far... I'm going to show it again in a second, zoomed in, but he's so far off the ground here. And this is where he is left the diving board. He's way up. He's got to come down from there. He's not comfortable being that high, so he points his toe down, which we'll see in a second. He loads the diving board again, and he just goes up in the air. This guy shredded his calves for a long time doing it this way. So we just watch that quick. The right foot's way worse. Can you guys see that? I know if you watch enough people, it's just super obvious. So he didn't want a heel strike, so he adopted this run form. And it's very, very common. So it's blurry because this is 10 years ago with a camera. But his foot's pointing down. Here's his tibia. Here's his shin. Here's the position of his foot. The heel's off the ground. That's the lowering that needs to happen. Your Achilles attaches right back here. He lowers that down, stores all that energy in the diving board, and launches forward. So this is what happens. This is a runner that came to us this week who is a toe runner. I've been doing a lot of posts online about midfoot running because we have this thing coming up. And he came in saying, I think I have a problem because I talked about this in one of my videos. And sure enough, he definitely did have a problem. What you can't see here is he's actually grown some extra bone from landing on his toes so much. Bone is kind of stupid. All it knows how to do is grow more of it. So if you land on your toes enough, that Achilles pulls on the bone and you get what's called a Hagelin's deformity, which is this big swollen bulbous heel. So you can't see that here, but he does have that. And then he's been essentially running on eggshells 12 miles a week, and he's a 40 to 50 mile a week runner for about 3 years because he's either dealing with an Achilles injury, he's banished himself to cycling life because his Achilles and calves are so bad. He came in this way, and this is completely asymmetric. In general, and this is, let's see, left leg. You should be able to see some range of that leg coming over the front. And this, he's like, oh my God, my calf is on fire right now. That's as far as he can get. We took some tools, we looked in there, you do this little soft tissue stuff. This is completely filled with knots and a bunch of grossness that has essentially limited his ability to take his shin over his foot. So we look back at the running motion again. You land, your shin needs to come over your foot so you can come forward. He's been landing on his toes so long that he puts the heel down. He can't get his knee to come over anymore because of all this tightness. And then he has to lift forward. I mean, it's just a disaster. We didn't watch him run because he couldn't when he came in. But seeing this enough, when you have this much tightness, it's a problem. So we will watch him run when he's able. But this is what happens. I mean, 3 years of on-off running, calf injuries and Achilles injuries from toe running. And he actually grew some extra bone down there for a trifecta. Avoiding the heel strike with a toe strike is not going to improve your running or your ability to stay injury-free. In fact, it's going to kill that. You're going to be wasting energy up versus moving down the road. You'll be doing a lot of running upwards. And then you'll trade your knee issues for just Achilles issues. And I would take a knee issue over an Achilles issue. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. Someone with a knee like probably kill for an Achilles. But you'll definitely go down a rabbit hole of a whole host of other issues when you do that. So this are the 3 things I covered. Secret number 1 is how to stop breaking on every step. Secret number 2 is how to improve your run form so you can tap into your natural rubber bands. Secret number 3 is to improve your run form without toe running. So how should you run? And that's what I kind of want to demonstrate right now. When this foot comes forward, what you have to do, and I'm not going to go into the depth of the drills of that, but when this foot pushes off, what you need to start teaching yourself is when I talk about foot landing, we have heel strike, we have toe strike, and then we have what I call midfoot strike, which is the whole foot hitting the ground. I can tell you that if you stop thinking about your foot and you think about your knee position, it will change the game for you. One of the easiest things you can do, there's 2 apps that I recommend. One is called the Huddle app. The other is called Coach's Eye. And you can have someone just film you on a treadmill to see what you're doing with this. But what you want to start training yourself to do is as this leg swings through, it'll come up, come through. You have to teach yourself to get to this point, stop the movement of your shin coming forward, and let the knee come down. Even if you hit your heel first, the bent knee is the key thing to think about. We talk about midfoot strike a lot because people are so in tune with what a foot strike is, but it's really about this bent knee. So we'll have people come in who run, who heel strike, but a nice bent knee, and we won't touch it because there's a lot of risk to sending them too far forward. But you have to learn to teach yourself to come here. The best of both worlds is when you land on the whole outside border of your foot with your knee bent, and that allows you to absorb and shock absorb and load inwards and then go back towards your push off. So this would be the posture. So when you're going from a heel strike to a midfoot strike, the only thing that changes, so watch me swing this leg through. I'm here, learning how to stop there and come down and land. Watch my knee. I'm not even changing my foot position. The only thing that changes there is I'm straightening my knee, and that causes the heel strike. So you're really not even touching the foot. You have to learn how to get that foot to come through and land. So there's a whole host of drills. So we can we'll try anyone? Yes. We'll take someone up on the treadmill. I'll teach you guys some of the drills. We do have a program coming up that teaches a lot of this. We've been doing this for 10 years, doing analysis. Myself and Pat O'Connor. Pat O'Connor is one of the founders of BRG. He's retired and he's just kind of working with runners now. But over the 10 years, we've definitely been tweaking a lot of stuff, and it really comes down to a couple of drills. If you can learn how to do that and learn how to not do it too quickly, you're in pretty good shape. The next steps. Think of your running form as important part of your training. It can be worked on while running without extra time spent. So we have an upcoming training that teaches all of this and more. I'm going to go through this with some of you guys because you guys are here, which is nice. When I put this online, no one's going to be going through this with us. So the upcoming program is we do a 5-week program called the Midfoot Project. It teaches all of this. Is the Midfoot? I'm so nervous with Kate here that I got to... No, just about the grammar and everything. This put together really late last night. I'm not even reading them. I just kind of know what they say at this point. Yeah. You do. I think I still have one as well. So if anyone's interested, before we get started on working on someone here, here's what's included when we do this program. We only run it once a year. We do 5 weeks of online training. Essentially, the nice thing about the internet is that we used to do this one-on-one, which we realized it really didn't need to happen so much. And the request to do it, unfortunately for everyone else, drives the cost up a little bit. So we're able to put this in a program where we provide essentially all the training we've learned and just give you the drills for it, and we lead you through it. It includes weekly homework checklists and videos. The dedication is about 30 minutes a week to go through the 5 weeks. We give you all the exercises that we use and the drills to learn proper midfoot strike or that bent knee landing. And in the 5 weeks, we do live coaching events with everyone. This is an individual, so she's from Alabama. She did it with us. One of the things that we were always worried about is, can someone not be next to us and do it? So we put about 200 runners through this program in the past. She's from Alabama, never met us. I think she's coming to Buffalo this year. She's running faster, happier, with fewer aches and pains. So that's Robin. She went through this last year in 2018. So this program's great for people who are worried about their knee health in the long term. This is where it's not good for you if you're currently injured with a calf or Achilles problem. When you make this transition, especially with us, you're going to take the load from your knees and you're going to start learning how to load other parts of your body. Your calf and your Achilles do take more load. Whether you do this right or if you do it wrong, they take a lot of extra load. But if you have one of these injuries, this would not be a good idea because it's just going to flare it up. And then if you have I call it a race in the next 4 to 5 weeks. A race to me is like you're going out for blood, kind of like PR. I would not be messing with anything because when you make these changes, small little changes can affect the health of a couple different spots. So we like runners who, if you're going to go to a race, if it's a fun race, we like runners that's fine for this program. Or if you just don't have a race in the next 4 to 5 weeks, this program's pretty good for you. But if something's coming up, we don't want to touch you and be responsible for that. Feel stiff or sore during, after, or next day from running. So generally, that's speaking to most people in general, but That's who we prefer to see in this program, and we know we can help after doing this enough. So this is usually why people don't get started with running midfoot. They're just getting started running. They don't think that they're that fast or a serious runner. I always, fast is relative to me. Everyone's fast or slow to somebody. So I don't like that answer too much because you can just improve what you're doing. And I've never been running long enough that it doesn't matter. So those are the grumpy old guys usually. Don't give me that new stuff. Yeah, so those are the typical reasons why people don't want to improve it. I usually do that to them. I knew he came back at some point.
Now, before I leave you guys and start working with you individually, I want to just let you know that the Midfoot Project, we run it once a year. The next training is starting soon. There's actually probably a timer on the page you look at that we're going to start the next training for this. But I want to recap real quick what you get with this program. It's 5 weeks of online training and videos led by myself and Patrick O'Connor, who've been doing this for 10 years. It's about a 30-minute per week commitment. And the great thing is you get to actually work on a lot of this when you're going through your actual runs day to day. So we'll lead you through everything, all the tricks and tips and drills and training and exercises that we use to make this change for runners. We give you weekly homework and checklists. You go through this video we send you, you get checklists for the week, you go through that. We give you, like I said, exercises to improve your strength and your balance, drills to learn the proper way to midfoot so you don't take yourself from a heel strike to a toe strike. We've talked about all of the bad things that happen with that. So we have some really great drills that we found over 10 years of refining that work extremely well to teach this, so you'll get access to those. And you get weekly live coaching events and Q&A from myself and Patrick O'Connor, where we'll be leading you through this personally, this transformation in your run form, so that you can run faster, so you can get injured less and teach yourself to enjoy running again because you don't have to feel so beat up all the time. We do throw in 2 bonuses to sweeten for the Midfoot Project because we really want to entice people to get in. The bonus number 1 is a foam rolling secrets. This is actually a tutorial that I put together that will teach you. It's a video tutorial that will teach you how to use a foam roll to hit all the spots you need to prevent injury. So you'll be able to go dust off your foam roll, go find it, and actually self-massage yourself to get rid of injuries or get rid of tightness that might be slowing you down or setting you up for your next injury. And then we actually have a second bonus that ties in really nice for this Midfoot Project, which is my Finishing Strong seminar. So when you start to feel tired, when you start to want to go home essentially, how do you get your mind right? How do you get your run form right so that you can push through tired legs, so you can finish strong and get the best race possible? Now, typically, without doing this as a bundle, the product is usually over $1,000. If you were to ask Pat and ask to train you for 5 weeks and to give you all this stuff, it'd be $1,000 plus. We actually have some programs that sell at this with one-on-one training. The great thing about the internet, though, is that we can get a bunch of people together and we can all do it together. So what we do offer is this Midfoot Project that is starting soon. Again, it's probably posted on the page you're watching now. Is all included for only $100. There's some different things you can add on if you want a more personalized experience, but to get all the training, it's only $100. We really invite you because, as I've shown you in this, your run form is super important. You love running, and you should be dedicated to learning how to properly run. So without further going through that, I am going to open the floor to questions and answer the questions that have gone through this, that people have when we go through this program. So drop them in the comments if you see the comments here, and let's talk about some of the big objections or the big questions you might have about learning how to run midfoot.
There we go. All right. Great. Thanks everyone for watching. Let's go through some questions. Drop them in the comments. So midfootproject.com if you guys are interested in joining us for this program. As you can see, there's a lot of benefit to improving run form, just like I point out in this presentation. But we have a question from Paula who asked that she has a trail 50K in 4 weeks. Will this run form be the same for trail running? This is a great question. So I'm going to just put my phone down here for a minute. So if you have other questions, I'm going to answer this one, and then I'll answer any others that come across. Here's the thing what you have to think about with run form is that the movement of running should not change based on your surface. Your form should be the same regardless if you're running uphill, downhill, trails, roads, sand, snow, whatever it might be.
There's only one instance I can think of when your form is going to change, and it's going to bias itself towards a heel strike, and that's when you're running down a steep downhill. So let me just kind of back up here for a second. I want to show you. When someone's running, right, and we want to look at this form, as you come through, this swing through and putting the foot down will always remain the same with that nice bent knee land. But the change, for example, is if you're running like a downhill and you come through and you have to hit your foot, like here's flat ground running, right? I'm just going to move a little closer here. Flat ground running, here's my foot, should be like this. If we pitch downhill, you can see how on a downhill you're going to be forced to hit your heel first. Completely normal, but the foot's always going to be parallel to the ground. If you're running uphill, you're going to be forced into a toe strike because the toe's going to have to hit, but my foot position's not changing here, just the ground is. So it works really well, and if you're on a trail, it's still the same run form because you want to eliminate that braking. The only difference with trail running is sometimes you encounter those steep downhills. And what you should do, or what people usually do, and it's because of safety, is that people will reach really far out and they'll stick the heel out because they need to slow down. The hill's too steep. I completely get that because we have some hills around here that are like that. And you're forced to a heel strike because you need to control your speed. So that's a great question. It doesn't matter if you're on trails, roads, snow, whatever. It works, and your run form should be consistent across those pieces. So thanks for the question. What happened? Thompson asked, what happens to the hips as your form moves to midfoot from heel strike? What happens to the hips as your form moves? I'm not quite sure. I understand the question, but I'm going to take a stab at it anyways. When you transition from a big old heel strike with a straight knee, right, because that's the issue, to a midfoot strike, what you're essentially looking at with this is a increased activation. I don't know why I'm moving away. Increased activation of muscle. So what we find for a lot of runners is that when they transition off their heel onto the midfoot, they usually get some calf soreness, some quad soreness, some glute soreness, some butt soreness, growing sometimes. You're essentially going to be using those muscles the same, or not the same, but you're going to be using those muscles more when you're running, which is great because you want your muscles to be engaged with less braking. So what you can think of is with the hips is you're just going to be, how do I want to say this? They're going to be just going through the same running motion. There's not going to be much changing for them because most of the change for the run form happens on the front end of that stride. And then when we go through and we talk about our next program, which is called, we're working on, which is how do you open your stride, that's going to be about the back end and front end of your stride, how you open that up. But there's not much changing for your hips. Hopefully that helps a little bit. So changing your, this is a great question. Jennifer asked, is there any negative side effects to changing your form? 100% there are some, right? So if you, the upside is way bigger than the downside. You have to do it properly. One of the biggest things we see is Type A runners, we give them a little bit of training, and they just say, okay, this is the right way to run. I'm just going to go for it. I don't want that old way. If you tell me it's bad, I'm not going to do it. So they overdo the new way. So think about this for a second. You're taking the load from running that is essentially going through your bones, and now you're going to transition it to muscle and tendon. If you do this too quickly or your body's not prepared for this, you can suffer like an injury from this. I can tell you that this program is not going to stop all your injuries, right? I'm not claiming that because running is an injury sport. But what you will do is you'll be able to bias yourself into fewer injuries or getting rid of those most common things or minimizing them. So when you change your form, there are some risks, especially because it is changing the way that you interact with the ground. There are some risks to getting soreness. You can get hurt this way. You're going to get hurt regardless whether you run my way or the old way. I'm just looking to decrease how often that is, and we can do that through run form. So there are risks for that. If you're concerned, or one of the reasons we add so many exercises to this program. So when you do the Midfoot project, you get drills, you get strength workouts, you get balance exercises, because we have to get those muscles up and going. The first week of the Midfoot project is training muscles and starting the drills. So there's just always risk for that. So hopefully that helps. Does heel striking place more stress on the plantar, and what impact does the midfoot strike have on the plantar? So plantar fasciitis, right, bottom of the foot, which goes from your heel to your toe. And what kind of effect does that have? Truthfully, the plantar doesn't get too initiated with heel striking, or not heel striking, midfoot running, generally what you're going to find is a little bit more towards the Achilles and the calf when people start off. But there's not a lot of ill effects for the plantar fascia. If anything, you're going to be decreasing some of those impact and those collision forces with the ground, so you're not going to be crashing, heel first right into the ground. So there's not a lot of worry when you run midfoot versus when you run just running midfoot is not going to bang up your heel too much. So we actually kind of like it for most people. The big thing, really, and I'm going to close here. I'll give you guys a little bit more time to ask a question, is that people ask, when's the best time to work on your run form? I always tell them yesterday, because there is a well-supported literature, and when you look at this biomechanically, proper way to do this stuff. I always like to go back to swimming. I think I might mention it in here. But if you want to swim better, you go to someone and teaches you. If you want to ski, you don't just start bombing down a hill. You try to get some fundamentals. If you want to learn how to golf, you can play more, but it doesn't mean that you get better. Running, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but running you get better by just doing it more because your body becomes more efficient. But remember, you become more efficient at being inefficient. We want to retool that program. We want to retool yourself so you can adopt a way that lets you run for next 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be, on your own terms. So that's what the Midfoot Project's all about. You get to come train with Pat and I, and we would love to have you. One more question. I got a goal race in May. Is there an ETA for another go-around and or knee for speed? We're looking, so when will we run this program again, right? It's not the right time for you. Completely understand. That's okay. We run this program once a year due to our schedules. We are looking at offering another one. We do not have a date to run this program again. We're maybe thinking about the summer, but so far it's been once a year. And then the tack-on program, which is Need for Speed, which is going to teach you how to stop shuffling and open your form, much like the Midfoot Project does for heel striking. We're looking at midsummer for that. It is not set in stone. We're working towards that, but a lot of great stuff coming. Midfoot Project is ending soon now. So tomorrow, depending on when you watch this, March 31st at midnight is the last day to sign up for this program, and before we launch. And then there's no late entries because everyone's going to be already started. So we're not going to be catching people up, and there's so many puns I could use right now about catching up and being left behind. But anyways, go to midfootproject.com if you want to join in, and we will be happy to have you. I got one more question here, and then I'm going to go because I got to get going back to my family because it is the weekend. I have a tendency to get shin splints. Would Midfoot help with this? You can't guarantee anything, but shin splints a lot of times are because you're crashing into the ground with this hard heel strike, but also because the muscles aren't supporting you when you go through the loaded phase of running. So really, exercise and improved run form are great for shin issues. So thank you all for joining me. This is going to be on replay. I'll be looking at questions. Midfootproject.com if you want to join us. We would love to have you, and you can find more, again, at midfootproject.com. Hope everyone enjoyed this. We had a great time putting this program together. We are winding down because we're going to be transitioning into helping instead of promoting or putting our flag in the ground. So have a great day, everyone. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Bye. How do I get out of this? There we go. Bye-bye.